Maybe it's not. It is taking video. Good. Okay. Good morning and welcome to our professional development on differentiation in the general education classroom, or as I like to call it, do I have to make a new lesson plan for each student? The answer is maybe, maybe not. So, children learn in many ways. We generally accept that there are visual, oral, verbal, physical, and logical groups of people. The people that are visual or spatial, they prefer to use pictures, images, oral, auditory, musical, singing songs, remembering things by poetry. The verbal, they prefer to use words. They like to speak, they like to write. Kinesthetic, they need to use their body. They have to move around. They can't sit for 6 hours straight learning. They've got to be able to put their hands on something, take it apart, put it back together, be moving. And then you have your logical or your mathematical people. They prefer to use logic, reasoning, systems. If a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective has to have a linking verb and has to have an adjective that refers back to the subject, well, I've got a perfect formula there. If it's this and this, then it's that. Our personalities influence our learning too. We have many students in our classes that are social, very, very social. And they like working in groups. They like working with their peers, with their friends, even with people that they don't really get along with, but they can still work together. We also have solitary people. You'll often find a few of them in the classroom, and they just prefer to work alone. They get more work done that way. They get to concentrate better. Maybe they just are not that social of a person in any form. Sometimes it is hard to get them to work with a group. All right, so primary learning styles, auditory. They learn through listening. Kinesthetics do best when they're actively involved. They tend to have high energy levels. They prefer to do something than to listen, and they lose much of what is said in a lecture. But they do really well with role play, hands-on. They're generally pretty good at sports and dance, but they do have a hard time sitting and listening. Your auditory learners, they remember stuff that they hear better than stuff that they see. And your visual learners learn best with pictures, illustrations, photos, graphs, diagrams, anything that they can really look at and kind of memorize. So, more about the learning styles. The logical, mathematical. These people need to have study techniques like organizing their material logically, explain the material sequentially. They need to develop systems, find patterns, write outlines, develop charts and graphs, analyze information. In the opposite side, we've got the linguistic verbal intelligent. They are good at remembering written and spoken instructions and information. They enjoy reading, they enjoy writing, they're good at dictating or giving persuasive responses, and they're able to explain things really well. And they often tend to use humor in classroom situations. So, the brain has to find a way to store and remember its information. How is it going to do it? Well, different sections of the brain cover different things. We know that the visual learners, the occipital lobes, tend to manage all of that. With the oral learners, the temporal lobes handle oral content. The verbal, the temporal, and the frontal lobes, especially the two specialized areas in the left hemisphere of those two lobes. Physical, cerebellum and motor cortex. Logical, the parietal lobes. Social, frontal, and temporal handle most of our social activities, and solitary, the frontal and parietal lobes and the limbic system are also active in this style. So, what is differentiation? Because that's what we're talking about. It is teaching strategy that enables educators to modify their instruction to address the strengths and the needs of diverse set of learners. That is from the Kohler book. These students are all ready to learn, but they're ready in different ways. We have a kinesthetic boy here who's got a ball. We've got, I'm guessing that's a laptop, so she is a verbal person, or auditory, artistic, kinesthetic. All of these are learning styles, and all of them, if you can access them, will improve the student's abilities. Okay, why? Why do we differentiate? Yeah. Okay, so there isn't any one way to differentiate instruction. There's 3 different ways we tend to do it. We differentiate either the content, or the process, or the product. Content. If somebody is reading at a lower level than the rest of your class, you're going to modify their reading so that you really have the basics, what they need to see. Process. We change how something is done. A student that is very kinesthetic and is having a problem reading the difference between opinion and fact. So today we took a big ball that has knobs on it, wrote opinion and fact on all the different knobs, and we played a game in the classroom where whoever caught the ball had to look at what it said and then come up with a fact or an opinion or product. I've had students in the classroom who a book report with 5 paragraphs is just more than they were going to be able to do. We modify the product. They are still coming up with a way to indicate plot and attributes of quality literature. They're just doing it in a different way. Maybe book in a bag book report, or a poster, or even an oral presentation. There are some kids that will do much better just speaking about it than actually writing about it. We also differentiate according to their readiness, their interests, and their learning profile. I'm not going to differentiate auditorily for somebody who's logical, mathematic, visual. Not going to make sense. So when we differentiate according to their readiness, we are trying to increase their growth. When we do it according to their interests, we want their motivation to increase. There's nothing worse than an unmotivated student. And then learning profile. We want them to be efficient in their learning. If they learn best in a certain manner, let's teach in that manner, or at least make changes so that they can learn in that manner. So, differentiate instruction strategies that enable each student to advance and accelerate. In a unit on the Middle Ages, we differentiated product to meet student interest and to increase motivation. Their interests were dancing, and the learning style was kinesthetic. So I had the student research 3 different medieval dance styles, pick one to demonstrate and to teach the others. Why did they have to teach the others? Because when you teach someone, you learn it much better. Now, here we differentiated content instead of product, and we did it to meet student readiness to increase growth. The unit was Rome. The readiness was the student was reading at a 3rd grade level. So we found comlit.com containing reasoning passages at varied lexile levels, as well as some guided reading. And text is revealed as the students answer questions. It's in a different format. It's not a, hey, listen to me, write this all down. They read the text, they answer a question. More text appears, they answer a question. There's also a thing, an informational text from bird brain history, and it gives some information, and it allows the students to take notes. It gives you a lot of information. Okay, so we all have different classroom management styles, as well as teaching styles, just like the students all have different learning styles. We've got the authoritarian. They tend to be very rigid, they demand obedience, they are very directive, they have a lot of structure. That's authoritarian. And then we have authoritative, which is assertive self-regulation, giving guidelines, enabling. They're supportive. There's two differences there, right? Authoritarian and authoritative. Both of them talk about the authority that a teacher has, but in one of them, it is more of a forced at you, and in this one, it's more of an expected and let me help you. And then we have the teachers that are uninvolved. They're not interested. They're passive. They are absent a lot. We also have the permissive ones. They have no guidelines. Their children are running amok. They're very indulgent. We have a few of those as well. So we need to be able to adjust to the needs of our students. So how are we going to find out? How do we make the connection? Because that's what we have to do. In order to find out what we're going to do to make them able to learn better, we need to find out from them how they think they learn. How do I get to know my students? Well, one day in class, I handed out some cards and asked them to write on there what I wish my teacher knew about me. It was anonymous, if they chose, or not, if they also chose. I had one student who actually did put her name on it, but I covered it up, of course. I found out some things. I found out one of my students likes to play chess. Very analytical, very logical-minded. That was good to know. I wish my teacher knew that I cry when I'm mad and I'm quiet when I'm sad. Good to know. And I had one for this student. I'm very sorry that I talk a lot. It's just things are hard. And to avoid it, I make jokes. And I laugh. I'm really sorry. She wanted me to know that she was having a hard time in class. She was using her humor to cover, but she was having a hard time. So, here's another strategy that we use in differentiation, which is flexible seating. Right now, this is how my classroom is set up. This is the front. Here's my desk. Here's a little half desk that I use for individual works or small groups. And then here are my desks set up in rows. Why is it set up that way? Because I work at a school that requires that. It is a traditional school. Everything has to be row by row by row. You understand that. You are also in that same situation. So, how do we differentiate with flexible seating? Can we differentiate with flexible seating? We can. We just have to be a little more creative. So, in my classroom, this year I had a very small number of students. I had extra desks. I put them at the back and made it little pods. And when I had them doing small group work, that's where they went. I also had them working on the floor sometimes. I had them working on a carpet other times. I moved them around, grouping them in different areas with different levels. One strategy is to group them by same levels, same ability levels. Another method is to group them in a situation where there is a student who is of a higher level along with those lower level students so that they can both assist and kind of push that lower student to try a little bit harder, do a little bit more, because they're going to work for their peers way more than they're going to work for us. Okay, so large group instruction, modeling a skill, then teacher-assisted practice, then individual practice, then teachers addressing small groups and keeping them interested by switching around. Okay, so we need to figure out how are we going to read the data to figure out what differentiation we need to do. Well, we start with the school assessment tests, the pre-tests, right? And then we look at the grade levels, we look at the planning, and we look at when our next assessment window is going to be. So what we need to do then is meet together, plan, coach, and get that ongoing progress monitoring. And by the time we get to the next assessment, hopefully we've got a better grade. So this works for both self-contained classes, those classes that, 5th grade, one teacher all day long, or classes that switch from subject to subject in a cohort. That's like my class. They switch back and forth between myself and another teacher for subject. All right. Another thing you need to do, you have to identify the students both by their needs and strengths, but also at-risk students. Use your data to determine who your at-risk students are. Those are the ones often that you're going to be doing the differentiation for. Okay, so the object of assessment is for students to demonstrate their learning and mastery. This is great, but not everybody does well on tests. Face it, there's a lot of kids out there with really bad test anxiety. Is there something else they can do? Is there another way that they can show their mastery of that learning without dealing with that anxiety and nervousness and feeling like they're just going to fail? Because that's kind of where they're thinking. Well, one of the ways I like is the choice board. They're given descriptions of what their different choices are, and maybe they have to choose one from column A, one from column B, and one from column C. They can do brochures, posters, raps, songs, research reports, timelines, scripts, plays, journals, anything that they can come up with that shows that they've mastered the content. Once you've determined what the content is, finding a way to show their mastery should be easy. For the Egypt unit that we are working on right now, one of the things the students have been doing is they looked at a bunch of different things that we still use that were invented by the Egyptians, and then they had to write a mummy rap. And that would either be a poem or a rap song about the accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians. So, what else do we have to do? Sometimes we're going to be looking and we're thinking, oh, we need to differentiate for this student because they have an issue, and it's not really, it's just they come from a different style of learning. So we got to check out, make sure that we have a culturally diverse curriculum, capitalizing on the strengths and remediating weaknesses to achieve their maximum learning and growth while presenting students with an emotionally safe environment. That's key. Emotionally safe. They can't be afraid that the bullies are going to go after them, that the teacher's going to go after them, that their parents are going to be mad at them. They have to feel safe to explore and learn and to fail, because that's how we learn. We fail, we try again. That's one of the skills that we're teaching them right now, perseverance. We also need to have available resources so that we can maintain that strong home connection with the school. So, technology. There are so many different apps out there. I've given you a list of different ones that I've used in the past, different ones that have worked well, and some that I haven't even tried yet, but they sound really good. They're all evidence-based. They've all had research done behind them, but it gives you ideas of what you can do. MobyMax, Common Lit, these are great tools. These are great for adapting curriculum. And for adding in those high interest things, because that's, you got to motivate too. Google Classroom lets you communicate really well, giving feedback almost instantly. And students get to make PowerPoints, brochures, papers, journals, lots of other digital creations. The new one that they're loving is Prezzies. Amazon Music, iTunes. We get to access authentic musical pieces to play for our students. You know, if you're doing medieval studies, you've got to play Gregorian chants, right? Because what's the Middle Ages without them? And then we have Learn 360 and TeacherTube. These give you access to a lot of educational videos, programs, even some content like printable content. So these are my references. You all have a copy of the PowerPoint. You also have a copy of what is differentiated instruction, which gives you some more sources on it. If you have any questions, you know you can email me. And thank you for your attendance. Okay, bye-bye.